big announcement, we're having a baby. Yes, I'm going to be a dad, and I'm so excited about it. Paige is due in March, and everything's been going well. We've gone to a couple different doctor's appointments and did some ultrasounds, and baby's looking healthy and developing normally. We just did an ultrasound recently where baby has little toes, like, oh my gosh. And I saw in the ultrasound, like, the baby squirmed and did like one of these, and I flipped out and just like tears, and like it's real, like we're having a baby. There's a being inside of my wife Paige that is growing, and I'm just floored by the profundity of having a kid and being a parent now. And gosh, what a blessing. I'm just so excited. And I'm so excited to tell you. I've been sitting on this for weeks, and I just could not wait it. I just could not stand it. And I keep telling friends and strangers, even though Paige tells me to keep it hush hush, because things, have been early, and we're still kind of early, and we just want to make sure everything's developing well before kind of telling the world. But I talked her into telling the world now, because I just can't hold on to it anymore. I'm just so excited to tell you that we're having a baby, and man, I can't wrap my head around how to express just the full excitement. I've been thinking a lot about parenting and fatherhood, and maybe this question in particular that's been at the front of my mind is, why bring a child into such a messed up world? And I've heard that from a lot of my friends and a lot of people my age that are looking at kind of what's been happening politically, what's been happening with COVID, what's been happening just in the world at large, and like, why would I bring a child into a world with so much suffering? And I think the answer's in the question. I mean, just personally, like, I see that as like, okay, if that's really the question that's got you stuck, it's like you're claiming a few things within that question. So you're claiming that you have an idea of how the world is messed up, and you think the world is messed up because you're comparing it to the way things should be. And then even in the question, you're expressing a little bit of empathy there because you don't want your child to suffer. So then the question is, how do you, maybe lower the suffering while mitigating what's messed up in the world? And that's, well, by bringing people into the world that are living the way they should. Like, if the world's messed up, that's even more cause to have lots of babies, because maybe you could raise them with the right values and raise them to live the way they should. And if there was a lot of people in the world that were living the way they should, then the world might be a better place. So that seems like a fairly optimistic and reasonable proposition is, hey, if the world's messed up, make it better. And maybe the way that you make it better could be in having lots of babies. Because that's my persuasion. So, there's also, though, an underlying fear in that question around a child experiencing suffering, and I think that makes sense. I think that's valid. That there's a lot of fear in a child experiencing suffering, but I can't imagine that would be a reason not to have kids. Because in what world does suffering make life meaningless? In what world do we say that because the world is messed up, or because there's suffering in the world, that means that life shouldn't exist? Like, I just can't wrap my head around that conclusion. The real question maybe that could replace that should be like, what makes the suffering worth it? And maybe you don't have a clear understanding of that for yourself, so it's hard to imagine it for your kid, which is totally understandable. But walk with me through this for a minute. Like, what makes the suffering worth it? Like, you could think about it in really mundane ways. It's like, people, I don't know, when they train for like marathons, they run and run and run in the hot heat. They wake up early in the morning and they suffer, running these miles and panting with their lungs, but because they have a goal, they want to run a marathon. Like, and so the suffering, the waking up early in the morning, is worth it in comparison to the goal, which is to, achieve something. Saving money isn't fun. Like, you'd rather spend that on things that are interesting and exciting, but you go through that, suffering because you have a goal. You want to buy a new car, or, whatever. It's like that life kind of works on that relationship between, like, okay, yeah, there's suffering, but that suffering has to be worth it. And, I think this works even on the most extreme levels. Like I read Viktor Frankl, who was a psychologist who endured the Holocaust and was in the concentration camps. And he talked about just this decision that men were making at the beginning of camp life to either commit suicide and grab onto the electric fence that surrounded the compound, or to endure the treatment in the concentration camps. And for Victor, it was the memory of his wife that he said shined so much brighter than any of the darkness in that camp. And that as long as he had that memory, each day was worth it. That he could just hold in his imagination, hold in his memory, the beauty and the love of his wife. And there's an implicit decision that we make, I think, morally, when encountering suffering, to say is like, which shines brighter? Which has more power? The beauty and the majesty and the blessedness of life, or suffering? Which covers up which? And I just believe with my whole heart that it's the things that are beautiful in the world, the things that are good and true, that if pressed into, make the suffering worth it. And that's what I'm going to teach my kids. Is I don't really have any intention of trying to make their life super comfortable, or trying to give them a lot of like happiness, because happiness will come and go and comfort will come and go, and that's good and fine, but I have so much more of a passion for ensuring that they turn out noble. And nobility is something that is carved out in your character through contending with the suffering that presents itself to you. Nobility is choosing, like Viktor Frankl did, the good and the beautiful and the worthwhile over the struggle. It's voluntarily contending with suffering so that you can achieve something, or realize something, or advocate for something beautiful and just and good. And yeah, that's what I want to teach my kids. I want to teach them to love what is true and is good and is beautiful. To love what is holy above all else, and to love their neighbor as themselves. To love other people, and to take it as their personal responsibility to ensure the flourishing of their neighbors and of the people around them. And to look into the face of everything that's messed up in this world, and to not shrink from it, but to stand and to make the world a better place against all odds, and even with incredible suffering and oppression, to stand for what is beautiful and good. And it's in doing so that I think you bring about the kingdom of God. That you don't let evil cover up what's beautiful and good in the world. So that's at the core, that's at the heart of this whole thing. This whole realization for me is, okay, this is the season of life where I am imparting the most valuable thing I have, and the most valuable thing I have is this wisdom. The wisdom that I've received from the men and women in my life who have pressed me on towards the same goal. The wisdom of how to encounter and contend with the things in your life that are hard, with your own trauma, with your own suffering, with your own failures. And to not let them overwhelm you, but to press on towards the good. And I'll leave you with that. I'll leave you with that thought. I have so many more thoughts to come. I'm gonna try not to turn my Instagram into like a parenting blog, because that's not what this is. But I'm just pumped. So I'll talk to you soon. I'll talk to you next week. All right. Bye for now.